But you get this feedback somewhere.
Let's turn that one off and see what happens.
I'll turn them all off.
Is that one working? Okay. Okay, so they're going to try and turn this one down, but this one's off right now. Test, test.
You want to use a regular microphone?
Yes.
Maybe they can do subtitles.
The previous presenter was Bruce Springsteen, so they have it. Who would ever need it so high? Hold on, he should have it. Give him a chance. No, it's not. All right. Yeah, let's see it. Oh, so. Test 1 2. Test 1 2. Test 1 2. Okay. Oh, can you use it now? Test 1 2. All right, he did it. How about that? Okay, back in business. I hope. Okay, there we go. All right. Okay, we have a few minutes left for Torah now that we finished that. Shabbat Shalom, everyone. Here we go. V'shamru b'nei Yisrael et ha-shabbat לעשות את השבת לדורותם ברית עולם ושמרו בני ישראל את השבת לעשות את השבת לדורותם ברית עולם ביני ובין בני ישראל אותי לעולם אותי לעולם ושמרו בני ישראל את השבת לעשות את השבת לדורותם ברית עולם כי 6 ימים עשה אדוני את השמיים ואת הארץ ושמרו בני ישראל את השבת לעשות את השבת לדורותם ברית עולם וביום השביעי שבת וינפש שבת וינפש שבת וינפש ושמרו בני ישראל את השבת לעשות את השבת לדורותם ברית עולם Baruch atah Adonai, Eloheinu melech haolam, borei bria gafen. Amen. L'chaim. Okay, Torah Study blessing. Baruch atah Adonai, Eloheinu melech haolam, asher kidshanu b'mitzvotav v'tzivanu la'asok b'divrei Torah. Amen. Okay, Torah portion this week, Mishpatim, making our way towards the middle of the book of Exodus, which means that we've passed the part of Exodus that we know. Right? We passed the 10 plagues and the Red Sea, and the Jews were slaves. And now we're to the parts that aren't as easy to remember because we don't deal with them every year on Passover, and they're not part of the story, but they're still in the Torah. Mishpatim means laws, which at this point in the Torah talks about the laws that the Jews are now going to establish because the first time that they've ever had a free society of a Jewish nation. And so they need to have some laws. And it starts off with slavery. I talked about that last night. If you want to hear about it, you can go back and watch it. Then you don't have to worry about it. There's on the off chance that, like the rest of the congregation, pretty much, you weren't here last night, you can go back and watch it. Not that we take note, not that we care. Okay. There's a story at the end. So where we're going to look today is chapter 23, beginning with verse 20. Chapter 23, verse 20, which is a little annoying because it's in the middle of a chapter. But even though it's in the middle of a chapter, it's still findable. You can still locate it. Right? Chapter 23 of Exodus, verse 20. And there's a story that you might now say to yourself, after we look at it, was that always there? Was this story always there? Or did last night we go into the Torah and superimpose some verses that have never been there before, and now they're always there? So every once in a while, it happens a few times, and we're going to look at 3 of them today. A man, an ish, or a malach, an ish meaning a man, or a malach meaning an angel, just appear out of nowhere. You remember the malach that Joseph saw when he went out to say, hey, have you seen my brothers? And there just so happened to be a guy standing there who was able to point him in the right direction. And the Torah doesn't tell us who he was. And here we're going to have the mentioning of another angel in verse 20. And later on, I'm going to show you a couple of other verses where this same angel, or possibly a different angel, appear again. Now, the rabbis debate who this angel is. Some say it's Michael, Michael. Some say it's Gabriel, Gavriel. Some say it's an angel known as Metatron, who's the angel that was closest to God. Okay, so it depends who you ask. You ask Rashi, you ask Nachmanides, you ask Maimonides, whatever. You could get a difference of opinion. It doesn't really matter. What matters, I think, though, is what's the point of this angel or this man? And by the way, the rabbis will tell you when it says ish, it usually it usually refers to an angel. And then they show you a lot of other times where it's clear that ish refers to angel, and so that probably is the case here as well. So what I want to do is look in the middle of chapter 23, who this angel is and how Moses relates to the angel, and then see where we find this angel again and see how that character relates to the angel. Now, this is like a spoiler. The other guy is Joshua. All right. The other one is Joshua. So if we look at how Moses responds to this angel, and then we look at how Joshua responds to the angel, we can learn something very interesting. But when it's all said and done, and after we look at what the classic rabbis have said about it, I had an idea. So I'd like to share with you my idea in about 40 minutes. And you can take it or leave it. You can take it or leave it. But I was thinking about this all week, and I put the sources together. And then yesterday, I was listening to an additional lecture about it that I heard a particular rabbi. This is what kind of things I listen to in my car. As I drive around, I listen to different lectures on the Torah portion. And I heard this lecture, and I said to myself, he said one thing, and it led me to think of something else. And I said, oh my gosh, I don't believe it. And I took out my phone, and I typed it into the notes, because I didn't want to forget it. And at this point now, a whole day later, I actually remember it. So that'll be the end. I'll share that with you. So just to sum up, there's an angel that appears in this week's Torah portion. We don't know who he is. We don't know why he appears. Moses has to deal with him. Later on, we're going to meet him again. Joshua is going to have to deal with them, and they deal with them in different ways. And if we can discern how they deal with them in different ways, we can learn something. And then once we learn something, maybe we'll learn something else. That's the game plan. Clear so far? Okay, so we're up to chapter 23, verse 20 of Exodus. I'll ask everyone, when you speak, to please use one of the microphones so that the people at home can hear you. I'm going to be away next week. I'm leaving for Israel tonight. So the emails that I'll get saying, why didn't you use the mic, could get missed. And chas v'shalom, I don't know where we'll be when I get back. So if you get a chance, use the mic. Makes it easier for everyone. If you're watching at home, welcome. Shabbat shalom. The source sheet is where it always is, tbam.org/worksheet. And there's plenty laying around. Does anyone not have one? Sorry, we're getting this echo. It's really annoying. But there's plenty of worksheets over here. Okay, here we go. Chapter 23, Exodus, verse 20. Here we go.
I am sending an angel before you to guard you on the way and to bring you to the place that I have made ready. Pay heed to him and obey him. Do not defy him, for he will not pardon your offenses, since my name is in him. But if you obey him and do all that I say, I will be an enemy to your enemies and a foe to your foes. When my angel goes before you and brings you to the Amorites, the Hittites, the Perizzites, the Canaanites, the Hivites, and the Jebusites, I annihilate them. You shall not bow down to their gods and worship or follow their practices, but shall tear them down and smash their pillars to bits. You shall serve the eternal your God, who will bless your bread and your water. And I will remove sickness from your midst. No woman in your land shall miscarry or be barren. I will let you enjoy the full count of your days.
Okay, so all these good things will happen if what? So you know what's happening? If this mic and that mic are on at the same time, we're getting feedback. Yeah, so I'll have to, when we're not using it, turn it off. So, all right, this is going to be really complicated. If when you speak, you could use the mic, but then make sure that it's on, then it will be more effective. Okay, so all of these great blessings will happen if what? If verse 21 happens. What's verse 21? Hearken to the voice of this angel, for my name is within him. Which is a weird thing to say. Why do we need this? Why is there going to be this angel? Why can't we just listen to God's voice, and then if we listen to God's voice, then all these wonderful things will happen? After all, Moses is speaking to God every day anyway. So now what's happening is, it's like a degrading of the relationship. Instead of being able to listen to me directly, you're going to have to go through this intermediary of the angel. Now, consider that we're in chapter 23. And as of right now, things have gone pretty well. But if you look at Rashi here, the first source on the sheet, Rashi tells us what's going to happen. So Rashi says, "Behold, I send an angel before thee." Here they were informed that they would once sin, and that the divine majesty would have to tell them, "For I will not go among thee." Now, he tells you where that happens. You see in parentheses it says Exodus 33:3. That's the Torah portion of Ki Tisa, which we'll read in a few weeks, and that's the golden calf. So what he's saying is, eventually, you're going to sin, and once you have that sin of the golden calf, and because when at Revelation, when Moses was up on the mountain, you gave up on him and thought that he was dead, and you built this golden calf and you started dancing around and going crazy with it, the relationship changed. And I'm still your God, but I'm not going to speak with you directly. I'm going to put an angel there. And the reason why is, according to the rabbis, because if I was there, I'd wipe you out. I'd be so angry that I'd destroy you. So I'm going to put an angel, and I'm going to give angels specific directions, like all angels have. And those directions are, you're not allowed to wipe out the people. You're just supposed to watch over them. And angels can't do anything except for what they're programmed to do. So I won't wipe out the Jewish people because I'm so angry at what you did. So this is a reference then, according to Rashi, and pretty much every rabbi agrees on that, that he's telling them, here's what's going to happen. However, Ibn Ezra has a different view. Edith, it's a little bit longer. Would you mind reading? We don't need all of it, but can you read the beginning of the Ibn Ezra? Second source on the sheet.
An angel may err concerning the angel. Many err concerning the angel. Some say that the angel refers to the book of the Torah, for Scripture says, "For my name is in him." Others say that the reference is to the Ark of the Covenant. They interpret and hearken unto his voice as, and hearken to what is written in it. They also say that "for he will not pardon your transgression" means "for God will not pardon your transgressions." Now all of this is nonsense, as this theme is found throughout Scripture. We thus read...
Okay, so, we get the point. What he's saying is, probably when he wrote, he listened to, Ibn Ezra had a class like this. And people would say, yeah, I think it means the Ark of the Covenant. I think it means, and then he went home. Shabbat ended, and he started writing. And he said, here's what I hear people think. And he wrote down, the opinions of the people in his class, and then he wrote, all this is nonsense. But at the time that he wrote that, he already had his emeritus contract. So he didn't care. He could write whatever, he didn't care. I would never say that. All right. It's funny. It's funny that he would say, who's he referring to? Other great rabbis. It takes a lot of chutzpah to say, here's what Rashi thinks, here's what this guy thinks. It's all nonsense. That's a lot of chutzpah, but when you're Ibn Ezra, when you're Ai, you can get away with it. So, but then he says to you, if you don't believe me, that there are angels, look at all the other times in the Torah or in the Tanakh that we have angels. And he gives you all of the verses. You see, every one of those parentheses is one of the time where there's actually an angel. So why would you be so surprised that there's another angel? It's an angel. Okay. And then he tells you at the end, he says, the angel referred to as Michael. Right? He says at the end. Now, I'm going to tell you, if you look at some of the other rabbis, Maimonides, for example, Rashi, they disagree. Actually, I think Rashi agrees. Maimonides and Nachmanides both agree. One says it's Gabriel, one says it's Metatron. It doesn't matter. And, in the video, the name tag that the angel is wearing, it's grainy. It's grainy, so you can't tell, is that an M, is that a G? So, how do you know? How do you know? So a good answer is, who cares? Now, yes?
This seems to focus on the fact that...
No.
I turned it off so that we need feedback.
All right, I'll turn mine off while you speak.
This seems to be an issue of free will versus destination. And the more you read, the more it seems as though God has mapped out what happens with us as we travel, how long we stay where we are, and how long it takes us to get where we're going. And it doesn't seem this is controlled by free will. It's not a decision. Even when the spies come back, it seems as though this is something God has planned. And I think we need to keep this in mind when we think about God has given us free will. I mean, it's like God has hardened the heart of, Pharaoh, but I don't know that that was free will. I mean, I don't think that was free will, a decision that the Pharaoh made. I think it was an example for us to travel through the desert, understanding the awesomeness of God, although it didn't work necessarily. But and I think we have to think about what is free will and what is predestined by God.
It's concerning because God is, Rashi's saying that, it's like that movie Minority Report. Remember that movie? The movie Minority Report, which it wasn't a great movie, but it was with Tom Cruise. And the premise of the movie was they could tell what people were going to do in the future. And so they would arrest people before they committed the sin. They say, what are you talking about? I didn't do anything. Yeah, but in 3 years you're going to kill someone. So we're arresting you now. We're saving his life. So we have a better system. We wait now until you kill the person and then we arrest you. It's fair. It's an interesting premise.
I turned it off.
I wish I'm not spoiling something you had for the end, but I think Moses himself is the angel, because we don't see this angel really anywhere else. And this is God talking to everybody, or at least God telling Moses, tell this to the people. Basically, Moses is setting himself up through the help of God to be that angel. If you follow the story, this angel never shows up. I mean, it's Moses himself that takes the people all the way to Israel. No, I just figured there was no other angel around.
This is one of the guiding ideas of the rabbis. Not everyone agrees with it, and eventually you can't agree with it because you'll see the angel comes after Moses dies. So you could say it's the spirit of Moses after he's dead, but the angel comes after Moses dies. But here, one of the ideas of the rabbis is that it is in fact Moses himself. Now, very, very well, very Talmudic. Well done. Okay, so what happens here now is Moses doesn't argue. And Moses says, okay, listen, if that's what you say is going to happen, we're going to follow this angel. However, when it gets down to it, after the story of the golden calf, and the story of the golden calf does happen, and God tells Moses, the angel's going to lead you now, not me, but the angel. What does Moses say? So you have to skip to chapter 33, verse 15. Actually, I brought it. You don't even have to skip to it. It's on the sheet on the back page. Because I knew that skipping in the book would annoy you. So I brought the whole verse right here on the sheet. Right. You don't get that in Boca. Right. Okay. Boca, all right, whatever. Doesn't work as well, because we used to, when I was in Fort Myers, I would always say you don't get that in Naples because Fort Myers had an inferiority complex about Naples. Here we're already better than Boca, so it's not as fun. All right. Don't worry about it. This is just the way I think. All right. Look what it says in 33:15. Here comes the story of the golden calf happened. You're now going to have an angel that's going to lead you. And Moses says, unless you go in the lead, do not make us leave this place. And the next verse says, if you don't come with us, if you send an angel, we're not going. And God says, all right, I'll take you. So in our story before the sin, God tells Moses there's going to be an angel, and Moses says nothing. He's like, okay, fine, have at it. But then the sin happens, and Moses says, we're scared now. We're scared because we see that, we're a sinful people. And we know the wrath that you told us that could happen. And you just killed or are about to kill all the people who made the calf. And there are other bad people out there. And an angel's not going to cut it. So if your presence isn't going to be with us, we're not going. And God says, okay, I'll go with you. Now, what's the risk? The risk is, according to Rashi, why did God say, I'm going to send an angel? Because I might get so mad at you when I see you sin that I'll just wipe you all out. And Moses then says later on, we'll take that risk. We would rather take that risk than have to go out without you. And so hopefully we're going to behave a little bit better. By the way, they don't. We have the sin of the spies. And God does wipe out the generation the long way. They got to schlep around. But they all die because of their next sin. And so now they come to the land of Israel. To the border of the land of Israel. And Moses dies. And who takes over? And where do they go? In Israel. Jericho, right. There's a player for the Knicks. I think it's the Knicks. Jericho Sims. And my son and I were watching the game a few days ago. He was playing. And the announcer said, Jericho Sims. I turned to my son and I said, his friends call him Jericho. And he said, what? Yeah, forget it. Forget. That's Hebrew for Jericho, Jericho. His friends call him Jericho. If he gets traded to the Wizards have an Israeli player. And then he might call him. But all right, a lot would have to happen for that to work. Okay. All right. Okay. So what's the story? Now, basically, that's the end of the story. The angel disappears, and God agrees with Moses and says, okay, I'm going to go with you. Moses has in his back pocket that he's a good lawyer, by the way. Because if God does say he's going to come and wipe him out, he's already talked him out of it a couple of times, and just tell him, hey, this is the seed of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. Sarah, Rebecca, Rachel, and Leah. You said you're never going to destroy them, so, hey, what can I tell you? You're the one who said it. But what happens is the angel goes away. So there's this angel who's going to come. We learn about it here. Brings us to some problems of free will and stuff. We understand that. It's always a popular topic. But then it shows up again after the golden calf. And God said, see, I told you, you were going to sin. They do. The angel comes, and Moses says no. And the angel leaves. And God stays with the people, and the cloud is still there, and they go out. And all of that is in the diaspora. Clear so far? Now, what makes the diaspora work for the Jews as a society at this point? What elevates the diaspora so that it has in some ways the same status as the land of Israel? Moses. So the Sinai experience plus Moses adds to the holiness because Moses is a direct connection to God. So as long as you have Moses, wherever you go, you're okay. You have that direct connection to God. Now Moses dies at the border. The Jews go into the land of Israel, and now you have the land of Israel, but not Moses. And it's equal because you have the land. And the land now has to take over for what Moses represented. Okay. Clear so far? Okay. So now you have a problem, though. You still have prophets. You still have direct connection to God. Joshua was a prophet. He's got a whole book in the Tanakh. I was teaching 7th grade this week, and one of the kids, trying to understand, why did the Bible end? A good A good time when we make clear that the Bible ended seemingly before it was too late, is when we get to Hanukkah. Because the book of Maccabees are not included in the Tanakh. Right? So why would we have the book of Esther in the Tanakh, but the book of Maccabees can't be in the Tanakh? And the answer is because at the time of Malachi, about 250 years before zero, God was so mad at the Jews that he said, I'm taking away the gift of prophecy. Now, you don't have to believe that, but they believed that. How do we know that they believed that? Because they sealed the Tanakh and said nothing else can go in. And since that point, Malachi was the last prophet. Nothing else was added to it. After that, 100 years later, approximately, the Hanukkah story happens. Too late. Can't put it in the Bible. Now, later on, the Talmud writes about it a little bit, but that's not the Tanakh. You know what I mean by the Tanakh, right? The Hebrew Bible, Christians call the Old Testament, the Torah, the prophets, and the writings. What are the writings? Proverbs, Psalms, other things like that you've heard of, but you're not really sure what is it, that stuff. Okay. So you get to Hanukkah and you read the book of Maccabees and you say, well, why can't it be in the Tanakh? And the answer is because the authors were not recognized as prophets. By the way, Maimonides explains all the things that had to happen to be recognized as a prophet. Right? You had to predict 4 Super Bowls in a row. Right? But with the exact score. Right? No, but there were like things you had to do. You had to say, like, next Thursday it's going to rain, and the Thursday after that there's going to be hail, and then this guy's going to die after. They had tests. But after Malachi, they said, there's nobody else, so they sealed the Tanakh. Right? So that's just a bit of history. Yeah.
Just a question. As I look at the things that the angel is going to do for them, how is this angel different from a Messiah? I mean, it looks like everything's going to be wonderful with the angel in front of them.
Is a later idea. It's kind of it's written into the Torah, but it's really a post-Torah idea because you're not going to need it yet. You don't need a Messiah. If you're on your way to Israel and you're going to build the Holy Temple in Jerusalem and have Jerusalem as your sovereignty, that's the Messianic era. The concept of losing Jerusalem, having the Torah be destroyed, brings up the idea that we're going to need someone to save us. But there's nothing to be saved from if the Jews are already controlled. If you read the book of Zechariah and you talk about, well, what is the Messianic era? Zechariah explains, old men will be sitting on benches and young Jewish couples will be getting married in the streets of Jerusalem. That's happening now. Right? But at the time of the first temple, they said, this is it. Doesn't get much better than this. Although their sins. So it's kind of a later idea that you don't really need it yet. Eliyahu hasn't been born yet. Eliyahu is going to be the harbinger of the Messiah. He's not even born yet. So it's sort of a later idea. Does that not mean it's not hinted at in the Torah? It is, but it's hints for what's going to happen later on. Now, in the meantime, what I was describing before is we had Moses plus the Jews in the diaspora. By the way, very close to the land of Israel. Moses plus the Jews in the diaspora. Now Moses dies at the border, and the Jews go into the land of Israel. And when the Jews get into the land of Israel, the first place they're going to go is Jericho, right? And that's when all of a sudden, the angel pops up again. You see what I'm saying? So you had Moses in the wilderness with the Jews in the diaspora. An angel pops up, Moses deals with it. And the way he deals with it is ultimately to say, we don't need you. Because we're going to risk it and we're not going to sin again. And, I blew that one, but that's what happens. And we don't need you. And actually, so you'll be amazed what Rashi says about this. But here's the story. It's Joshua chapter 5, verse 13 to 15, which is at the bottom of the front page of the sheet. This is just copied from the text. This is the verses in the book of Joshua. And in the book of Joshua, this angel now reappears. So just make this clear distinction. The first time we see the angel, Moses in the diaspora. The second time we see the angel, Moses is dead. It's Joshua in the land of Israel. Right? By chapter 5 of Joshua, they've crossed the border and they're in the land. Clear so far? And Ed, you've been there, right? Where it crossed. Was it Qasr El Yehud, something like that? I was supposed to go there and we missed it, but you never know. Hopefully someday I'll get there. There's a place you can go where the Israelites crossed the Jordan. By the way, the Jordan, you could jump over the Jordan it's about from here to the end of this podium. You know, it's not exactly the Mississippi, but they cut through it. All right. Okay, once, when Joshua was near Jericho, he looked up and saw a man standing before him, drawn sword in hand. Joshua went up to him and asked, "Are you one of us or of our enemies?" He replied, "No." Look at this. "I am a captain of the Lord's host." What a reaction. I'm a captain of the Lord's host. This is what I'm going to say tomorrow when I get to passport control in Jerusalem. Why are you, when they say to you, "What are you doing in Israel?" Right. You know what will happen if I say this? There's a little room, right? It would be hilarious, though.
For everybody but you.
Yeah, it would be very fun. Okay, so he says, "No, I'm a captain of the Lord's host. Now I have come." Joshua threw himself face down on the ground, prostrating himself. So obviously Joshua believed that he was someone holy. Why? Because he throws himself on the ground face down, breaks his nose, said to him, I'm just kidding about that, "What does my Lord command his servant?" The captain of the Lord's host answered Joshua, "Remove your sandals from your feet, for the place where you stand is holy." And Joshua did so. So if you look at this, you see very clear parallels to what happened with Moses when God said, "The place with the burning bush, the place where you stand is holy, take off your shoes." The difference is that Moses recognized God's presence and Joshua needed to have it explained to him. So Joshua was a smart guy, but he wasn't as smart as Moses. Nobody was as smart as Moses. Okay, so Rashi says something very interesting because yeah, there's a button.
Get up and take it outside.
Okay, so Moses' answer, this is according to Rashi, which we'll look at in a second, but Moses' answer is, we're not interested. In fact, if you send this angel, we're not moving. Chapter 33, verse 15. We're not moving, Exodus. Joshua has a totally different approach. Joshua says, "You're here to help me? I'll take it. Come on. How do you think I'm going to get these walls?" Joshua basically says, "I was wondering how we were going to get those walls to fall." Right? So this guy says, "That's what I'm here for." And look how Rashi explains it. If you look at, by the way, there's Rashi not just on the Torah, there's Rashi on the whole Tanakh and the whole Talmud, which is unbelievable. He's a busy guy. Okay, so Rashi says, if you look at the first source on the back side of the sheet, "I have now come." This is the messenger. Why? He says, "Ata bati" in Hebrew. Ata with an ayin, which means now. "Now I have come to help you. For it is impossible for man to battle against it," meaning Jericho, "and capture it, to knock down the wall. However, in the days of your master Moshe," that's Moses, "I came, but he did not want my presence, as it is said, if your presence does not go, then we will not move from this spot." So Joshua, who knew exactly what happened with Moses, it says in the Torah that Joshua never stirred from Moses' tent. He was always with him. He knew exactly what happened. That's why Joshua becomes the leader after Moses and not Moses' children. Moses says, okay, I'm ready to bestow the job on my children. And God says, no chance. They didn't always stay in your tent. Joshua did not stir from your tent. Joshua was there. Moses says, I don't want the angel. Now, later on, in the land of Israel, Joshua says, we'll take the angel. So what's going on? Why is he going to take the angel? Before we get into that, we already know this angel. We already met this angel. There's a very famous song. I forget how it goes, but it's called Hamalach HaGoeloti, the angel that redeems me. Where did we meet this angel? If you looked at the sheet, you already know. You know the story when Jacob is going to bless the two sons of Joseph, Ephraim and Manasseh, and he goes like this, and he blesses the younger one with the better hand. At that point, Jacob says something really bizarre. And I have it here. Genesis 48, verse 16. And he says, now, Jacob's been through a lot in his life. Right? What has he been through? That was a good pun, actually. Did you pick up on that? Oh, from Lot? All right, well, it came from Lot. So, it would be better if it was Laban. I'm so dumb. Okay, I didn't intend that one. It just came to me. Otherwise, I would have prepared you. Usually, I intend my puns. I watch these videos on TikTok of these two guys who have these dad jokes, and then I say them to my family, and they hate them. But sometimes they can't help but laugh. And I say, like I heard one the other day, I said, I said to my wife, that new shirt you bought me, it was getting too much static electricity, so I took it back and exchanged it for one free of charge. I got a million of them. There's another one. See, you guys have a keener sense of humor because you've been... my friend David lost his ID, so now I just call him Dave. I got a million of them. I can go on all day. All right. All right. So look what it says in chapter 48, verse 16. The messenger who redeemed me from all harm, bless the lads, right? We're talking about Ephraim and Manasseh. In them may my name be called, and the names of my father Abraham and Isaac, and may they be teeming multitudes upon the earth. So, why now is there a messenger? Because where are they? Where is Jacob when he's protected from Laban? Where is he when he's being protected from Esau seeking to kill him? In the diaspora. And when you're in the diaspora, there are a different set of angels who watch over you. Remember when Jacob left Israel, the story of the ladder, and angels were going up and down? That was the land of Israel angels going up, and the diaspora angels coming down. Because the Israel angels don't leave the borders of Israel. And so now that he was leaving, one of the angels came with him. That's a diaspora angel. And so Jacob is known for his travails in the diaspora. And by the way, he was very upset with Joseph because Joseph got too comfortable being second in command of Egypt. Once the whole thing with the famine was over, Joseph should have moved back to the land of Israel. That's why he says, I'm not coming to meet you at your home. I'll meet you in Goshen. I'll meet you in the Jewish neighborhood. But I'm not coming to the Goyish side of town where you live in your castle. I'll meet you in Goshen. Right. So there's this angel who's with Jacob in the diaspora. But when we come to Israel, inside the land of Israel, and Joshua sees the angel, This is a different kind of angel. This is one of those Israel angels. And they're going to help me do things differently than what the other angel was meant to do. The other angel was here to help us get to the land of Israel, but we don't need that because we have Moses. And the whole point of the golden calf was to say, Moses isn't good enough. Give us something else to lead us. But now that the golden calf is over, Moses is saying, if you send another angel, you're going to run down that same problem again, and they're going to go after that angel, and they're going to leave me. And if they leave me, they're going to leave you. So that'll never work. But when we get to the land of Israel, there's a concept in Jewish law that Joshua understands, which is called kibush v'chaluk. Kibush v'chaluk. Kibush v'chaluk means kibush, conquering. It's actually it's the Hebrew word today for occupation, which I think is a dirty word in Israel. But occupation of the land, the Jews occupying the land. And chaluk means you've now doled out to the tribes who's going to live where. And once that happens, then the vision is complete. The Jews are in the land of Israel. But you need those two steps. You need the conquering, and you need the distribution of the lands to the different tribes. So Joshua says, this angel is here to help us accomplish the goal. And the people will be happy with that. So let's do it. And they take. But there's a problem with it. Because when you now have the angel, and you don't have Moses, and Joshua's not Moses, even though he's really good, there's a degrading in the relationship or in the level of communication between God and the Jewish people. Okay? So there's the famous rabbi, the Netziv, 1800s. He's from the same town, the same family as the Soloveitchiks. If you go to about 5 years ago, the last time we had a mega mission, we were in the Warsaw Ghetto. We were in the Warsaw Ghetto Cemetery. It was the main Jewish cemetery of Warsaw, where they was used a lot during the Holocaust. It's a big pit. It's a very difficult place to leave, to go. So we were there, and Rabbi Harlig and I, Rabbi Harlig from Chabad of Kendall, were there, and we said, we've been looking at Holocaust stuff for 3 days, and we see all this. Let's leave the group. And he said to me, this cemetery is like Cooperstown. You have some of the best rabbis in history buried here. Let's go to see some of the graves of the famous rabbis. So he and I left the group, and we found the grave of the Netziv, who wrote the Hamek Devar. And he was really one of the most famous rabbis of the century. And he's buried in a little, what you call an ohel, but like a little structure. And inside there with him is the first Rabbi Soloveitchik of the Soloveitchik clan. The two of them were from the same town of Brisk, right? The Brisker Rav. So it was pretty cool to see the two of them buried. Anyway, here's what he says. It's in a foreign language, but I didn't feel like translating it. So let's see. I just want to show you a few words on the second line. So if you can read Hebrew, you can follow along, but I'll just translate it for you. So on the second line, if you count 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 words in, there's a word ele. Aleph lamed aleph. Ele. Ele shehu b'bechina nemucha memase haba al yidei HaKadosh Baruch Hu b'chvodo yizbarach. Yeah, ele. Ele, yeah. Rather. Ele, rather. Means rather. So what he's saying is, when you're dealing with an angel as opposed to directly through God, as Moses did, then it comes with a nemucha, a lower representation, a lower affect, bechina, a lower impression that it makes than if it was done by God himself. Yeah, that's what the Hamek Dvar adds here. That now that the Jewish people are, so you would ask the question then, why would Joshua accept it? Why wouldn't Joshua say to the angel like Moses did, that we don't want you, it's got to be God? And instead, that's not what Joshua does. Okay, couple answers, and then I'll tell you what I think, and then we'll conclude. We need a mic. First Ken, then Eileen.
I think perhaps he accepts it because he realizes that this angel is actually God. I don't know, because Hamakom, they talk about Hamakom. Usually Hamakom is a holy place to begin with, taking off his sandals. And so I think he feels that that is actually God. And they use, I think, the singular rather than the plural in this last Hebrew thing, because it's not the messenger and God, it's God.
Hamakom, because Hamakom is a word that often refers to God. I mean, there are a couple, there's some questions to answer then. One is, how come Joshua doesn't know at first that it's God? Why does he say, are you on our side or their side? And when the guy says, I'm a captain of God, what does he, what exactly does he mean by that? But it's interesting. Yeah, it's an interesting thought.
The other thing in Genesis, when the messenger, they say, when Jacob says, bless the lads, nowhere in the Bible do you ask an angel, do you pray to an angel to do that. You only ask God to do that. So you're saying that messenger back then in Genesis was not God because they were in the diaspora, but I wonder even about that.
Well, no, what happens there is that Jacob himself blesses them, but the blessing is that those angels should watch over you. I think that's the idea, because they're still in the diaspora, and so they need that extra. Basically, what he's saying is, I've got this guy. I got a guy. He's a diaspora angel. He's going to watch over you while you're out here. I think that's the idea. And the reason is because your kids are going to be slaves for 200 years, and they're going to need someone to watch over them. So,
maybe Joshua accepted the angel because he didn't have the faith in God that Moses had. Because Moses had faith in God to say, I'll deal with you. I don't want to deal with the angel because I
Right.
have faith in you.
okay.
And maybe Joshua didn't have the faith that God would somehow take down the walls just directly for Joshua. He figured, I need the help of this guy here, this angel.
Yeah, I would say, actually, because Joshua's got a pretty good reputation until the end of his life, but I would say, maybe I'd say it a little bit differently. It's not that he doesn't have faith in God. The question is, does he have faith in himself? Can he do it?
Right.
And because he's probably looking at these walls saying, how am I going to get these things down?
Right. Faith in himself, that's a good thing too. But not faith in God, but the faith in God that Moses had.
Okay. So here's what I think in the last couple of minutes. These are all very interesting points. We could elaborate on a lot of them, but this is just what I thought about. What Joshua is dealing with is the aftermath of a greater sin than what Moses is dealing with. The golden calf was a really bad sin. But God didn't destroy the people because of it. In fact, he didn't even punish the people because of it. There were the 3,000 ringleaders who were killed, the ones who made it. But the rest of the people had no punishment. They were still on a direct path to Israel. There wasn't going to be 40 years of wandering. They were going right to Israel. They'd be there in about 12 hours. And there would be the guy at the border who would put stickers on their bags and take them to their rooms so they wouldn't have to schlep them from the bus to their rooms. Because that's the hardest thing in the world to do in Israel. If you ask, you get off the bus and they tell you, we're here with the stickers. So you know what I tell them? I could give you my bag and you could put the sticker on it. And in like 3 hours, I'll get my bag. Or they make these suitcases now with wheels. So I could just walk anyway and have my bag with me in about 3 minutes in my room. And that is such a shock to their system. They can't handle, you don't understand, this is our protocol, this is how we do it in Israel. So, you know what? I've been to 4 hotels in the last 3 days at work. It's because don't worry about it. I'll deal with this tomorrow. If they let me in the country after I tell them that I'm the captain of hosts. All right. So here's what I think. The second sin is way worse. The punishment for the golden calf is the 3,000 ringleaders die and everyone else gets off scot-free, with the exception of the firstborn. The firstborn, because they participated in the golden calf, they're now not going to be the people who serve God the most. Instead, there's one tribe that didn't worship the golden calf, the Levites, and they become the Levites. They were just the tribe of Levi. They were a regular tribe. Now they're the Levites. They're the helpers of the Kohanim. They get their status is elevated. But nobody else other than that is really punished. Fast forward to the sin of the spies in the book of Numbers, the Torah portion of Shalach Lecha. The Jewish people say, we don't want to go to the land of Israel because of the report of the 10 spies, minus Joshua, who did have faith, right, when he got to the land of Israel, and Caleb, minus those two. They go with the other 10, and God says, that's it, I've had enough. You're now going to wander for 40 years until all of you die, and your children, the next generation, will go into the land of Israel. So it's a much greater punishment. So Joshua now has 2 things different than Moses. One, the sin was much more severe. By the way, it's an interesting idea. If you think you're so great, even God doesn't think he's so great. God says, the first sin you sinned against me. You took an idol. You sinned against me. I can forgive you for that. The second sin, you sinned against the land of Israel. That I can't forgive. Very, very, like a nice way of looking at it. It's a different sermon. It's a different class. I have that class, but it's a different class. So the first thing is the severity of the sin. The second thing is the location. Moses in the diaspora. He's worried, if I don't have God in the diaspora, we're in serious trouble. Joshua now has something that Moses never had, which is he's in the land of Israel. And so if you send me an angel instead of actually God, it's okay. I feel safer here because I'm home. Which is an interesting idea. But if you take what the Hamek Devar, and so all of that is one idea, but here's the idea that I had when I was driving the other day, and you can take it or leave it. But the Hamek Devar comes and says, when it goes through the angel, it's less potent than if it were directly from God. That's easy to understand. If I read you a letter, on behalf of, the president, I said, wow, Joe Biden wrote a letter to Beth Am. He said, dear Beth Am, you're lucky you have this class. Whatever, something like that. You'd say, okay, that's cool. Letter from Joe Biden. He signed it, very cool. But I said, hang on one second. And he walks in. He's not here. He's not here. He wanted to come today. He's not here. But you would all be, oh my gosh, the president's here. Whether you like him or not, it's pretty cool. Right. So it's more potent. But because of the sin of the spies, the Jews moved themselves further away from God. And it got to the point where the angel was all they could get. And maybe Joshua knew that after the sin of the spies, this is the best we're going to get. And the people, especially the ones who committed the sin of the spies, after that, they'd moved away from God. And they actually wondered, why should we even follow the mitzvahs? If we're not going to the land of Israel and we're going to die out here anyway, why should we even follow the mitzvahs? Now there's the Mikoshesh. Remember the Mikoshesh? The Mikoshesh was the guy who gathered wood on Shabbat. And then he got killed. And he sacrificed his life for everybody. Why? Because what he wanted to show them was the mitzvahs still matter. Even though we're not going to the land of Israel, I'm going to sacrifice my life to show that I'm going to get killed, to show you that you still have to do the mitzvahs. He could have written an article in the paper. It was a little dramatic, but sometimes, whatever. So, what happens generation after generation is from Mount Sinai. You had the generation that was at Mount Sinai. And even they had trouble getting it. And they blew it. The generation who saw Mount Sinai lost faith and died in the wilderness. Well, then the next generation, they were either really little or they weren't born yet at Mount Sinai. And they only heard about it. And the generation after them, their parents heard about it, so they heard about it. And the generation after them, their grandparents heard about it, so maybe they heard about it. And the generation after them never knew their great-grandparents. And the generation after them didn't even know who their great-grandparents were or where they came from. And the generation after that couldn't even tell you their names. I mean, how many of you know the names of your great-great-grand? I mean, how far back can you go? Maybe you can go back 3 generations, 4 generations, 5 generations. At some point, you can't go back anymore. So now we hear, an infinity amount of generations since Mount Sinai. It's harder to believe it, and maybe Jews don't believe it anymore, or how could you? And the videos we have are hard to decipher, what happened then, and it gets harder and harder. And the further away you move from God, or from something happening, from when I say God, I mean from Revelation at Mount Sinai, the harder it is to believe. And we have plenty of Jews today who say, Torah, it's just a book, it's just stories, I'm not interested. So what I think is that what the angel is in Joshua's case, Moses may be different because he had a much closer relationship with God, but I think in Joshua's case, there's a message for us. Because God knows that the generations are going to go on. And the generations are going to get farther and farther away from Revelation. And God knows, I'm not doing this again. This revelation was a one-time thing. I'm not doing it again. And he knows that further generations are going to be farther away from it, and it's going to be harder for them to believe. So then comes this angel. And the angel, I don't know, is the angel Moses? Is the angel God? Is the angel the Torah? Is the angel the Ark of the Covenant? But it's something miraculous in this world that appears to the Jewish people, or appears to anybody. And someone could see that and say, wow, there must be a God. And so what I think is that we're so far away from Revelation that we're not sure if we even believe it. Right? I mean, some Jews believe it 100%, some people are 50%, some people are 0, whatever. But there are miracles that could happen in the world that could make you say, wow, there is a God. And so I think what this angel represents, this is just my idea, you can take it or leave it, but I think this angel represents the notion that God built into history and into our world things that are so miraculous that make you say, wow, it's got to be from God. And the first thing I thought of as I was driving around, because I was just driving around and it occurred to me, oh my God. I thought to myself, oh my gosh, this angel, for me, was when my kids were born. When my kids were born. Because that was a time in my life where I said, oh my gosh. And there have been other times in my life where I said, oh my gosh. But I think the idea of the angel, once you're in the land of Israel, because once you're in the land of Israel, we could very easily say, we don't need angels anymore, we have the land. And Joshua says, even though I'm here in the land, there's this big wall, and I don't know how I can get it down. And so God shows him something to remind him that I'm here. And I think that we've all seen things in our life, or at least believe in the potential to see things in our world to remind us, oh my gosh, there really is a God. And to me, that's what this whole story of the angel represents. For Joshua, it was a guy with a sword. For me, it was maybe when my kids were born, or some other really cool stuff that I've seen. over the course of my life. Another miracle will be if I'm able to use this joke, get passport control, and still get through. I'll then say, for absolute certain, there is a God. Okay, Shabbat Shalom. Ladies and gentlemen, one more quick announcement. Shh. Can I just have your attention for 1 second? I would tell you about a couple of things that are coming up. March 3rd, we're going to have an event here that we're co-sponsoring with the AJC. We're going to have some envoys coming from New York, from France and Germany. We're going to be doing a program on combating anti-Semitism in Europe and the United States, along with the AJC. So that will be here 7 p.m. on March 3rd. And on March 28th, Temple Beth Amen, our new unbiased initiative, is going to be hosting an event for the whole area at Pinecrest Gardens, co-sponsored by the Village of Pinecrest, a panel discussion on biases. We're going to have, I'm going to be on the panel. We're going to have an African-American pastor. We're going to have a Latino woman. We're going to have a Jewish student, a Muslim student. It's going to be a really interesting event we're inviting the whole community to, and I hope you'll come. So that's March 3rd here, the AJC event, March 28th at Pinecrest Gardens. It starts at 6:45. For that one, you do have to register because we're careful on security there. It's free. You can register on our website, templebetham.org. So 2 important events to look forward to. Also, keep your eyes open for Purim, which is coming up. We're going to have a full Megillah reading this year, something new. We're actually doing Purim according to how you're supposed to do it. So you might want to check that out too. All right, Shabbat Shalom, everyone.